Welcome to Daytime Ottawa here on Rogers TV. It's Friday. We made it, everybody. Oh, my goodness. Not only am I excited because it's Friday, I'm also excited to talk to our first guest on the show today. There's no better way to kick off a Friday show than a little bit of comedy. Joe Avati has been doing comedy for over 25 years, and he's making a stop on his When I Was Your Age tour on July 15th, and we'll catch up to him in just a moment. But here's a little taste of what you can expect.
And this little kid is yelling and screaming at his mum, and the mum is in tears. And you know that ethnic part of your brain which has got no filter? And I walk past him, but just give him a whack. And the mum heard me and she freaks out. She goes, I have never hit him in my life. And there's your problem.
There he is, Joe Avati, and he joins us from Boston on his tour right now. How you doing, Joe? Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Are you allowed to do those jokes on TV anymore?
I think
I know I can do them live, but...
Yeah. You know, what's funny about that is, you know, you're talking about, you know, ethnicity and
yeah,
you know, part of the culture, but you and I are about the same age. I mean, you're in your late 40s, I'm 53 years old. So, you know, we grew up in a time when, you know, like my mom did give me a whack, right?
Yeah, that's right. You know, and I think that today, the problem, the difference is today is that when we cross the line, our generation, they give us, you know, a whack. But today, when they cross the line, they turn off the Wi-Fi. That's all they can do.
That's right.
And it's not the same. It doesn't have the same. Turning off the Wi-Fi does not have the same impact.
What do you think about how times have changed, Joe? You know, just like looking at you and I growing up in the 80s and now what you see today. I mean, talk to us a little bit about how you see today's young people compared to yourself growing up.
Well, look, you know, we only had two things to do. Either you played outside or you watched TV all day. That were the two things, right? And we knew when to come home because the street lights came on. But now, you know, kids today play games that make them think that they're outside, and it's a false reality, if you know what I mean. You know, and it's very, very different. I mean, you know, I wasn't even allowed to have a toy when I was growing up. You know, my dad would be like, a toy? I just have a toy for 20 years. It's called a shovel. So that was his toy. So how was he? And you know what? This is another great thing. Kids today have got no problem asking for very expensive things. Like, do you remember, like, if we wanted like something, we would be too scared to ask our dad. But today they're like, oh, Dad, I need a new iPhone. Well, what for? Because this one doesn't do anything. Yeah, well, either do you. So what do you want?
It's so true. I mean, you talk a lot about your dad, Joe, in your stand-up, and you've been doing that for so many years. Just tell me about, you know, that relationship with your dad, and I mean, you obviously have a special relationship. What did he think of your comedy when you first started talking about him and the way that he interacted with yourself?
Yeah, well, look, you know, I exaggerate a little bit about him, so he knows that. But he likes it. He likes it because it's clean. So, you know, he doesn't like me swearing, and that's why I don't swear in the show. It's not because I don't want to offend people. It's because I don't want to get a clip around the ear from him. But, you know, that's really why. But he's very proud, although he'll never tell me that. And it's very different. But you know what the big difference is the way that he treats my son. And my daughter, you know, because we weren't allowed to do anything wrong. We weren't allowed to step 1 foot out of place, right?
Right.
But now, you know, this is why I blame the grandparents of today why these little kids are spoiled. Because our parents give our kids things that they never gave us, mate. Little things like love and affection. You know,
yeah, exactly.
Just little things. That's all.
What about parenting for yourself? Like, do you parent? I imagine you parent differently than how your parents brought you up. How has your parenting changed?
Well, this is the dilemma that young parents today face, especially when you came from an Italian family. Half of us want to discipline our children the way we got disciplined. But the other half doesn't want to go to jail, you know. So, I find myself, like my wife, she's a millennial, so I'm old school. So if my son is going to go near the heater, I'm like, don't go near there, you're going to burn yourself. And my wife's like, no, just let him go. He'll just touch it. He'll burn himself a little bit. He'll learn his lesson and he'll move on. And part of me wants to subscribe to that. But at least I know with my old school ways, you'll have enough skin to be able to give a fingerprint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the difference in between my wife and myself. You know, I'm old school and she's a little bit more modern, and we kind of have to find that middle ground, which is hard.
Joe, take me back to when you first started comedy. For those that aren't familiar, what was your starting? How did you get into comedy in the first place?
Well, I wanted to be a rock star, but if you hear my voice, you'll know why, and that never happened. Right? So then I went to university. My dad said, get a degree and do whatever you want. So I got 2 degrees at university. I'm a food scientist by profession. But then I started tinkering around with comedy, and I thought, no, this is my way. And I developed this one-man show about growing up Italian for Italians, and it went onto Napster. It went out all over the world, and I've been touring ever since. You know, to cut a long story short, that's basically how I got into it.
Tell me about this specific tour and how it's been going, and obviously new material you brought in, and probably some old favorites. Let's talk about the tour.
Yeah, so it's a 142-date world tour going through all of Australia, Australasia, into North America, over to Europe, Belgium, South Africa. And it's a brand new show. It's called When I Was Your Age. And kids can come. So the kids, I encourage the parents to bring the kids so that the kids understand what they went through, right? We, people of our generation, because I talk a lot about growing up in the 80s and the differences of the 80s and now, and then the grandparents come and see how much they've changed, Like, for example, these kids have got that Shazam app where if they hear a song, they put the phone near a speaker and it tells them the name of the song.
Right.
Well, do you remember our Shazam? People of our generation, we had to remember the tune. The next day, we'd have to go to a place called a record shop and sing the song to the guy behind the counter.
It's so true.
And the guy knew the song, but he'd make you sing the second verse, right? And so I talk about all those tiny little details as well. And it's a 100-minute show. I'm on stage for 100 minutes. It's clean, like I said. I do not swear. I don't talk about anything vulgar, but I don't hold back. So I see, political correctness is not something that I sort of prescribe to, and I'm not afraid of. It's the job of the comedian to say the things that everybody thinks, but no one has the guts to say. And if you come to my show, you will be hearing it. You will be hearing what I've got to think.
And you know what? I'm going to say this, Joe. You do say those things, and I really appreciate it, because being in television, I can't share any of those things, Joe. So I have to rely on people like you.
Yeah, you're not allowed. Look, having political correctness at a comedy show is like having an occupational health and safety officer at an MMA fight. It doesn't. I don't understand. What's the point?
Joe, we cannot wait for you to stop here in Ottawa. What a pleasure catching up with you. Really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the tour. I know how much you love being in front of an audience, so enjoy that, and we'll see you here in Ottawa.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to it. It's one of my favorite places to visit. Ciao.
Love it. Again, Joe Avati. He's coming July 15th to the Meridian Theatre at Centrepoint. You can get tickets at joeavati.com or at meridiancenterpoint.com.